What's up, Nerdyverse? I'm Daddy Louie, and in this video, we are taking a look at a game called Arcane Arena. So stick around. Before we get started, if you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure that you subscribe for more content and hit that bell icon so you don't miss any future videos. Arcane Arena is an upcoming Kickstarter launching very soon. It is for ages 10 and up. It is for 2 to 4 players and takes around 60 minutes to play. In this game, you are acting as a contestant or a fighter in the Tournament of Champions. This game is separated into 2 very distinct phases. One is a deck building phase known as the training phase, where you will gain new cards and powers and abilities in order to take on phase 2, which is the combat phase, which acts as like a card combat fighting type of game. You'll move around the board playing cards and completing attacks and other kinds of actions. The winner is the last player standing at the end of round 3. But is it good? Well, if you join me on the table, let's check it out. All right, let's first take a look at the components here for Arcane Arena. Keep in mind this is a prototype copy. Although a lot of the components are very well made, everything is, of course, subject to change. So here we have the board, very nice, small footprint, folds up into quarters there. And we'll talk a little bit more about the board in a little bit. We also have these player tokens, simple cardboard tokens that will indicate where each player is located on the board. We also have some reminder cards, as well as our health trackers. For the purposes of this video, we'll be using D20s to keep track of health, but the game does come with these health trackers. You get a coordinated card with a coordinated token to represent your character. We also have these glass beads up here. They're really nice. I like them a lot. They are used for favor trackers or favor tokens, which we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Then we have our basic hands. If you're familiar with deck builders at all, you usually always start with a certain number of cards, and all of the cards are the same for every player. So in this case, you'll get 4 of these move cards, 2 of the attack cards, and 2 of the buy cards. That creates your starting deck. Then we have focus cards. They are always available for purchase until, of course, the focus cards run out. Wound cards just represent wounds that your character takes, and it gets added to fill your deck with stuff that you don't really necessarily want. And then, of course, the main attraction here is the main deck of cards here. This deck consists of many different types of attacks, moves, abilities, blocks, all kinds of different stuff. We'll talk about more of these as they go on. I do really quickly want to take a look at these cards so I can show you what all of the things on the card represent. All right, so let's take a quick look at the anatomy of a card here. That will help you to understand a little bit about how the game works. First and foremost, here we have the art. I think the art in this game is really unique. It's unlike anything I've ever seen before, and I really, really like it. I really enjoy the aesthetic that they're going for when it comes to the card art. At the very top here, you see this blue line. That represents the type of card this is. This is a blue belt card. There are different colors: red, green, blue, black, etc. Down here is really where the main information is for this card. This first number here, this 2, that number on all of the cards represents the cost that you have to pay in resources in order to purchase this card to add to your deck. So again, if you're familiar with deck builders, you will be familiar with the cost of a card. The second number here, represented by this symbol, which in this case is blank, represents the amount of buying power that this card gives you to purchase other cards. So if I were to play this card to purchase something, it generates me no currency. Okay, so I would not be able to use this card to buy another card. The next number here, represented by this little man jogging, you see 4 pips. That is the amount of move. So if I were to play this card as a move card, it would give me 4 spaces of move, which is fitting considering it's a dash card. So later in the combat phase, when I'm moving my player around the board, I could play this card using its move stat to move my character 4 spaces, as you can see written there. The last number here with this little fist icon, that represents the amount of attack power. So again, later in the combat phase, when I'm moving around the board and I'm trying to attack people, this is the amount of power that this particular card is going to generate when using it as an attack. Then down here in this text, if you see italicized in quotations like this, that's just flavor text. However, there are some cards, like this lightning bolt here, that also has actual abilities on it, where in this case, this lightning bolt says this also deals 3 damage to everything with health next to the target. It also has a few other pieces of information here. This 3 with the little crosshair icon, that represents range, so this lightning bolt can be played up to 3 spaces away from your target. It deals 4 damage to the target. That's represented by this 4 with the little blast symbol. And then, of course, with the power, it says it also deals 3 damage to everything with health next to the target. So if there are 2 players who are next to each other, like this over here, and I were to play this card from this space, I would count 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3, and then I could use this card to play this lightning bolt spell, and it would deal 4 damage to my main target, which is this yellow here, but then it would also deal 3 damage to this back player because he is next to the target, my original target. The final thing I want to note here about these cards, some of the cards have this symbol at the top of them. This means that in order to play this card for its effect, I need to also discard a card from my hand. If I do not have a card to discard, I cannot use this ability. So in order for me to play this lightning bolt, I need to have at least 2 cards in my hand. I need to discard 1, and then I need to play this card. Okay, and that is how the cards look and the things that you need to know about the cards. Let me go ahead and set up for a 2-player game, and I'll show you how it plays. Okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning of the game, each round of the game, which is there's 3 rounds, is divided into 2 very distinct phases. The first phase is known as the training phase, and this is kind of the deck building portion of the game, in which you will use your deck of cards and your hand in order to generate purchasing power to buy cards from this area here. You can always buy a focus card as long as there are focus cards available to purchase, and you can buy any of the cards here in the center as long as you have the purchasing power in order to buy them. A couple things to note when filling up this space here. 1, you can never have more than 1 copy of the same card. So if any time when you're filling up, you go to place a card down that already exists here in the field, it automatically gets discarded and you draw a new card. The other thing to look out for is the card color or the belt color. You can never have more than 2 of the same belt color. So you see here we have 2 brown, 2 orange, and 2 green. If I were to, let's say, not have a card here, and I were to flip over a card and it was a green, as you see there, I already have 2 greens. This card would get discarded and I would draw again. Now I have a red, and we're good to go. So those are the things that you want to note here when filling up this area. Other than that, you randomly determine who the first player is going to be, and the first player goes by drawing a hand of 3 from their deck of cards. Remember, everybody starts with 4 moves, 2 attacks, and 2 buys. So I would draw 4 cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, And now I have the purchasing power combined here of 2, 3, 4, 0. So I have 4 purchasing power, which I will play by discarding them, and then look here for anything basically 1, 2, 3, or 4. So I'm going to go ahead and purchase this card here because it has a purchasing power of 3. So that's going to be good early game to pick up. I have 2 left over. I do not fill this until I'm done. So I'm going to go ahead, look around. I don't see anything else that I want for 2, so I'll go ahead and take a focus as well. And I take those by placing them in my discard pile, and that is the end of my turn. I then go ahead and fill up by adding another card. It's a green, and it's also an illusion, so this gets discarded. I flip again, and I have a Jarring Blow, which is a black bell card. And then I would pass to my opponent. The first round consists of 3 turns. The second round consists of 4 turns, and the last round consists of 5 turns. And then you move on after those turns. You move on to the combat phase after each time. So that's basically the basic principles behind how the training phase works. Again, round 1, each player takes 3 turns. Round 2, each player takes 4 turns. And the last round, each player takes 5 turns of purchasing. So now I would then go ahead and I would draw 4 more cards in order to purchase again on my next turn. Once I'm out of cards and I need to draw, I shuffle my discard pile to create a new deck. So those cards that I purchased earlier, the focus and the other card, they will then be available for me to use in later parts of my turn. So that is how purchasing works. That is how the training phase works. Once the training phase is over with, you will move into the combat phase, which I will explain to you now. Okay, so after each training round, you will move into a combat round. In the combat round or combat phase, each player gets the same opportunity to knock all the other players out. You're looking for, at the end of each round, the last player standing. That player becomes the first player in the next round. And finally, in the third and final round of the game, whoever is the last player standing wins. At the top of the combat round for round 1, each player starts with 10 health. At the top of round 2, each player starts with 15 health. And at the top of round 3, each player starts with 20 health. Player number 1 is going to determine where they would like to start. That's represented by these colored circles here. And then the next player must choose a spot opposite that player. In this case, if we were playing with 3 players and that spot was already taken, the next player would get to pick either side, and then the last player is stuck with where they want to go. You also set up 4 favor tokens in each of the corners. I'll talk a little bit more about favor at the very end, but in order to gain these favor tokens, you must deal 2 combat damage to that token, and then you earn it. So you must be adjacent to it to deal combat damage to it, and then if you deal damage to it, it's basically broken free and you can take it. Other than that, combat works kind of self-explanatory. You're going to draw 4 cards from your hand, same as you would during the purchase phase, and then you're going to play cards from your hand in order to either move, attack, or perform some type of an ability. So right now, all I have in my hand really is some move and some basic attacks. I really want to get up close to this player over here. So it looks like I have 3, 3, 2, 2 movement. So I have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 movement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I don't need all of that. I only need, let's see, I still need all of it to get there. So maybe in this case, what I want to do is I just want to spend these 2 here to move 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then I'm going to discard the rest of my hand because I don't want to use the other cards later on. and then I'm going to pass over to my opponent. I'll then draw another 4 cards and wait for my turn again. My opponent would go, do some stuff, and then it's my turn again. So now I've got some things that I can do. This does no damage. This does 2, which is pretty good. That does 1 damage, and this also does 1 damage. So I can do 1, 2, 3, 4 damage now that I'm next to the player. So I'm gonna move right there, and then I'm gonna deal 1, 2, 3, 4 damage, taking him down to 6 health. And then he would go Again, I'm drawing 4 cards, and combat keeps going like that, leading up to, now I have this ability here that says switch positions with the target or move up to 6 spaces. I purchased that during my purchase phase or during my training phase, but you see I have to discard a card in order to play it. So, and I don't really want to move right now, so I'm not going to use that card. I'm actually going to just discard it, and instead I'm going to play 1, 2, 3, 4 damage, knocking him down to 2. So you can kind of see how playing cards and dealing damage works. You're going to do that moving around the board. And you're also going to have spells and stuff. So let's take a look at some of the cards that we have here in the deck. This one here is, let's see, I'm trying to find a good one. So we have stuff like this. This is draw 3 cards. So playing a card like this would help me to get cards that I was looking for during my turn. When this deals damage, you may trash it to shuffle 2 wound cards into your defender's deck. So this does 2 damage, and you can also use this card to deal wound cards, which I showed you in the beginning, to fill their deck up with stuff that they don't necessarily want, which is really strong. Some cards have range, like we showed you earlier. This one has a range of 3. This says move target up to 4 spaces. If they land next to a wall, they take 3 damage, telekinesis. So, here in this, I could play this card up to 3 spaces away. So I could be like here, and it says move the target up to 3. So I'm 1, 2, 3 away from my target. I could play this card, again, by discarding a card because it has a symbol at the top. And then I can move him 4 spaces. 1, 2, and I'm next to a wall, which is represented by this border here, so he would take 3 damage from doing that. And it gives me some separation, so he's going to have to spend cards in order to get close to me again. So there are many, many different types of really neat cards in here. Forceful Strike, it only costs 2, but it does 3 damage. It's really strong. And different colors do different things. Usually the orange tends to be magic. The red tends to be like hand-to-hand combat and stuff like that, as you saw with the Forceful Strike. And there's another one called like Fury Blows or something like that. So there's many different types of cards. You can really feel like they drew some inspiration from things like Mortal Kombat, Dragon Ball Z, things like that. So if those are your types of genre, you're really going to feel at home here. But you get this classic martial arts feel to it as well. Some real Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan stuff going on. All right. So we talked about the training phase. We talked about the combat phase. You really have an understanding now of how the game works. Again, you're looking for last player standing. Let's talk about favor. Favor is gained in one of 3 ways. One is by knocking out a player. If you knock out a player, you get 2 favor points. You get those by taking them from the pool and adding them to your stash. You get 1 favor point for being the last player standing. So in a 2-player game, when you take out your opponent, you're really getting 3 favor. You're getting 1 for knocking them out, you're getting 2 for knocking them out and 1 for being the last player standing. The final way to gain favor is these tokens here in the center. You need to be adjacent, represented by these circles here, and you need to deal 2 combat damage to it by playing cards, and if you do that, you gain the favor. All right, Daddy Louie, but what can I do with this favor? Well, you can spend favor in one of two ways. The first way that you can spend favor is extra buy value. So during the training phase, you can take favor and trade one favor in for 1 point of buy value. So if there's something just out of reach that you want to purchase, but you don't have enough buying power to do it, you can spend one favor for one buying value. And you can do that as many times as you like, as long as you have the favor to pay for it. The second way that you can spend favor, and probably the more powerful way you can spend favor, is during the combat phase. You can spend 2 favor to draw 1 card. You can only do that once per turn, but it is very powerful to have more cards than your opponent. The more cards you have, the more you can move around the board, the more you can deal damage, etc. So spending favor in that way is very, very valuable. It could be enough to get you the killing blow on your opponent. But guys, that's really everything that you need to know in order to play Arcane Arena. At its core, Arcane Arena is a lot of fun. It's a lot more fun than I was expecting it to be. The game really hits a lot of things that I like about gaming in general. I'm a big fan of card games, deck builders. I'm a big fan of games that don't have a large footprint, so I can play them virtually anywhere. This kind of hits all of those marks for me. I also really enjoy games like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, things like Dragon Ball Z. And so the martial arts and the combat action that happens in this game hits those marks for me. The art is very unique. I've not seen another game that uses an art style like this, and I really, really enjoy it. I will caveat that by saying I am not a fan of how the cards are laid out. I don't really like the little symbols that are down here that represent the different stat values of a card. I also had a really hard time, especially in the beginning, of reading the numbers. The font that they decided to use for the numbers on the card is pretty difficult for me to read, especially at first. Once I got used to it, it wasn't so bad. But again, I think that if they were to change up the font style on the cards, if maybe they were to change some of the layout on the stat values there, I think that that might go a long way. But if you can overlook those very minor things, this is a really fun game. Like I said, this Kickstarter is coming out very soon. They plan on having stretch goals and alternate arts and a lot of cool things like that built into the Kickstarter. So this is not something that you're going to want to sleep on. I will leave links to everything in the description below. Make sure you go and check it out. What do you guys think of Arcane Arena? Let me know down in the comments section below. If you are new to the Circle of Nerds, if you want to see more of us, you can check out all our social media. We have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff, all at Circle of Nerds. Also, don't forget, we have a brand new podcast just recently launched called the Krusty Cantina. Make sure you go and check that out anywhere that you get podcasts. And for an extra bit of content and some behind-the-scenes stuff, make sure you check out our Patreon at patreon.com/circleofnerds. Anyway, guys, that's all from me. I will see you in the next video.